For today's video, I'll be going over my top 8 midfielder predictions for Supercoach 2021. Now, I remember back to last year, I did a power rankings for my predictions for the top 8 midfielders, and that was my, we did that through Supercoach Take. That's our podcast that's coming back pretty soon. We'll be going on all throughout the year as well. But my power rankings included almost no new faces, and I just thought, we have all these established guys, why would you start anyone else? And then what happened is Petracca was a forward, but he came and broke the top 8, and so did Jack Steele, where he was freed from the tagging role. So will anyone jump into the top 8 this year that no one really expects? Maybe, I'm not sure. A few young guys getting a bit more inside mid-time, but we'll see. But nonetheless, I'll go over my top 8. So probably a reminder to be a bit more open-minded than I was last year. But anyway, I'll present my top 8. So at 8th, I have the ever-reliable Crom, Matthew Crouch. So I'm a big fan of Matt Crouch. I picked him a few years ago, I believe 2018. So in the back half of 2017, on the run the Crows had to the grand final, he averaged something like 125 in the back half of the year, something like that. And I thought, this guy's game is perfect for Supercoach. He can't play anywhere else. He stays in the inside. He stays as an inside midfielder, and he can collect the ball a fair bit. He will at halfback quite a fair bit, just uncontested stuff. So a bit of extra stuff there. So that's part of his game. So really good for Supercoach. Unfortunately, he picked up a few niggles, and he's had a few form slumps over the last few years. 2020, he was dropped. He was just really out of form, and I think the entire The Crows coaching staff would just really stale, I think, and they've all been completely wiped out this year for 2021. And yeah, the team was just playing awful. Morale was down. They didn't really understand the game plan properly. But yeah, he finished like a house on fire in 2020, where I believe it was 140 average in the last 5 games, which is crazy stuff. He's always been capable of high scoring, not 140 over a full season, but I think he's capable of a 120 average, but sometimes he picks up a few niggles. Sometimes his efficiency's down a little bit. So I have him pinned at 113 average for the year. But yeah, he's going to get plenty inside mid-time. His time on ground sometimes, I think it's usually mid-70s. And I think that's because he can't be rotated elsewhere. He just has to go mid to bench pretty much. But otherwise, I think his endurance is pretty good. That's my only explanation for that anyway. So Matt Crouch, he's my number 8, and I think he's an okay starting pick. I think the limited preseason would probably suggest that prefer him as an upgrade target. So we'll see at Matt Crouch, but yeah, he certainly has the game for it. Number 7, I have Tom Mitchell. So Tom Mitchell, another one with, so I have him at 114 average, so just above Matt Crouch. So again, similar to Matt Crouch, except he has more time on ground, just plays the inside mid role, can't really play anywhere else. In his Brownlow year, he started hitting the score a bit more. But obviously he had the really bad broken leg. Not sure he's fully over it. It's still getting there, I think. So it's been probably about 2 years now. Usually it takes about 2 years to fully recover from a broken leg, I think. I think that's what it took in that Fife anyway. But yeah, also had the shoulder surgery. So played with that all last year and still had a really respectable 113 average. So really, my 114 average here is probably a bit disrespectful to Tom Mitchell. I see him as a perfect upgrade target because he has the first buy. Obviously, coronavirus might screw the buys up, but I'm planning for the buys anyway. So he's a perfect upgrade target after the buy, Tom Mitchell. So not much has changed from him. He's huge work ethic, and we saw him through injury play heaps of games. So big fan of Tom Mitchell, and for me, an upgrade target, but very low chance he drops out of the top 8. You just wonder if he was fully fit, he could be still 1 or 2 on this list. So hopefully he gets back to that level eventually. Number 6, we have the Bont, Marcus Bontempelli. So Dogs mids, I love the Dogs mids. People who have watched this channel know that. The durability, just the way they can score, their work ethic, it's fantastic for Supercoach. Bont actually spent a lot more time midfield last year than probably we all expected. I did read 77% CBAs. I believe that was the most outside of Tim English. So for someone who's supposed to be a mid forward, or generally known as the mid who can play that tall forward, probably a bit of a surprise. But he's the captain, he's the man. He knows that when the Dogs need to win the game, you put Bont in the midfield. So yeah, his ability to win the clearance, he can break away from clearances, and he's a really difficult matchup as well. Against teams like the Crows and Hawthorn who have no matchup for him, you don't want to not have him on your team in those games because it's pretty brutal. So obviously this year he said he's been working on his forward craft a lot. So that suggests he will spend more time forward than than 2020 in 2021. So I have him at 114 average, the same as Tom Mitchell. But yeah, he's durable, and look, he's a superstar, one of the best players in the league. Second half of the year, I think he averaged something nuts. I think it was 140 or something like that. First half, he got tagged a lot. And that's the thing, he's the one that gets tagged in that midfield, so you might be able to pick him up cheaper later on. But yeah, I think Bont's a fine starting pick. You probably get him cheaper at some point, but Bont can get high. If he was playing full-time mid, I think he can go maybe I was going to say 120, but then I remembered how much he gets tagged. So I have him at 114. I think that's reasonable. I still think he'll get plenty of mid-time. They'll figure it out. So yeah, I have Bont at 114 average, so it's a hard one to know with all the dogs mids shifting around, but I think he'll still get plenty of mid-time, and he'll only have a little bit of a drop-off. So I still think he's one of the best players in the league. So big fan of Bontempelli, and he is at number 6 for me. Number 5. I'm not sure I have a favourite dogs mid, but I say they're all my favourite, but Jack Macrae's got to be here. So number 5, I have him at 115 average, which is really disrespectful to him since he's gone 120 plus the last 3 years. But it's very obvious that the issue is that the dogs mids they have that now that it was already a problem, and now they've added Treloar, who seems like, I'm not sure he plays anywhere else, but we'll see. So yeah, interesting one. So Jack Macrae been very reliable for a long time. His ability to cover most of the ground, generally beats his opponent, runs taggers into the ground. No, there's no point tagging Macrae because he's almost untaggable. But yeah, it's hard to know what his wing split. So he's going to play forward as well, which is pretty interesting with Macrae. So that's what he said anyway. So certainly one to watch out for. This seems like an obvious upgrade target. It's just, again, with the dogs, it's so hard to know what's going on there. But, you know, look, full-time mid, he's 125 to 30. If he gets 70% mid-time, probably drops, I don't know, 10% of his score. I'm not exactly sure. He can still score okay on the wing. When he was played on the wing, he probably dropped like between 90 and 110 in 2020. So there's not much to say on Macrae. He's durable. You know what you're going to get when he plays midfield. It's just, score's going to pull back a little bit this year, we all expect. But we'll see. I've seen some people pick him, and that's fair enough. Number 4. Christian Petracca. Now, this is an interesting one, and maybe I have him higher than expected. But I did mention this in a video I did a few days ago, where a lot of people saying Christian Petracca, does he have the tank to play full games? Well, we don't know that, but what if he actually gets better this preseason? Because now that he's figured out what he has to do to be a superstar of the league, and we saw his contested ball winning is just off the charts. Even when he was doing stints in the midfield, when he went in the midfield, his contested possession count was huge, and I think he's the best contested possession winner in the league. Probably Dunkley second at this point. That's another story, but what he can do, obviously he's going to spend a little bit of time forward. But yeah, if he starts winning a little bit more of the pill, we could see, I think he's capable of like a 130 average at some point. Just so talented and still pretty young. I know it took a while for him to develop. But yeah, it's the contested ball winning that's so valuable for Supercoach. Probably, I assume he scored a fair bit worse in AFL Fantasy than Supercoach, but yeah, the Supercoach friendly game, the contested work, you can take contested marks as well. It seems to be a reasonable shot in front of goal, I think. Can't exactly remember. But yeah, Petracca, is he going to go down because of the extended games, or is he going to improve because he's got the perfect Supercoach game? It's an interesting point, and I'm very tempted. He is pretty close to my starting team. I haven't decided yet. So yeah, big fan of Christian Petracca, and yeah, we'll see how he goes this year. But if you want to start him, go for it. I'm all for it. Number 3, Clayton Oliver. So another one that sort of broke out in 2020. But what's interesting with Oliver is, I mean, look, he's durable. He barely moves out of the midfield. I think he can play a little bit forward, maybe like an 80-20 split or something, because I just think, you know, Angus Brayshaw and Jack Viney can't really play anywhere else. I'm not exactly sure on Oliver, but we'll see. But yeah, Clayton Oliver is sort of an interesting one. I think, yeah, he had something happen to his shoulder in the preseason, but seems to be fine. What I think has made Oliver so great is I think his fitness is just off the charts. I do remember, I probably mentioned this in other videos, but I remember one preseason he swam 100 kilometers over a summer. I think over like January or something, just crazy. But 100 kilometers is nuts. Swimming takes so much out of you. And then the other day he uploads on Instagram. He writes 100 times 100, and he's on some oval, I think. So 100 times 100. Does that mean he did 100 meter sprints? 100 meter sprints, like 100 times? That is nuts if you can do that. And we saw in the second half of the year that his kicking improved, and he was holding the ball more in stoppages. So he'd grab the ball, and instead of, you know, dishing it off straight away, he'd kind of run around and figure out what to do with the ball. So I think that helped his efficiency. So that's what I think helped his scoring in the second half of the year. It was also boosted by 200. I think he scored that. He scored that on the Crows. I can't remember. Probably, but yeah. Clayton Oliver, bulletproof selection. Depends if you have the money for it, but he's absolutely worth it in my eyes. Number 2, Jack Steele. This is a very interesting pick, and some people, I did a play picks video on Jack Steele the other day. A few comments saying, is Brad Crouch going to affect this? Does Dunstan come back in? I'm not sure. The thing with Jack Steele is, like, he's a main man in that midfield. If they need to win the clearance, you put Jack Steele in, no ifs, no buts. He can play a little bit forward, show really good forward craft. He's really accurate as well. So he kicked, I think, 0.6 goals a game, but I think he only had 2 behind. So I think it was 10 goals, 2, something like that. I can't exactly remember. Probably more than that. Maths is a bit off there. But yeah, Jack Steele, I just think the natural improvement. We saw him improve pretty much every year. Then he held back. He was held back by the tagging role. He's been freed of that. We've seen that's been left to Seb Ross. So that's not a Brett Ratton thing. That's an Alan Richardson thing. It seems you don't take. It's not going to happen anyway. But yeah, again, in the knee field, was averaging like 150 or something. Just crazy, stupid numbers. I'm a big believer. The guys that set the standard at training, so obviously the other day something came out, Dunkley sets the standard at the Dogs training in a team with Bont and Pelly in it. I'm sure Bond does as well, but it's still the point. Jack still sets the standards at the Saints training. Might be a big reason as to why the Saints have improved as well. So I think the Saints will go pretty well this year. They have a really great list, few superstar talent, Marshall and Max King as well. So I think Jack Steele, maybe the Saints are a year off, I'm not sure, but a big fan of Jack Steele, probably 90% in my team. So big fan of him. He just has the contest, so many avenues to score, tackles, contested ball, now goals. Amazing player. Number 1, this is very obvious, and you all know who I'm going to say. Jackson Haitley, the young Crom, playing inside mid this year. Okay, one day maybe. Okay, number 1. Also, Jackson Haitley, I think on 2 different, he's been interviewed twice, and both times he was said to pick him in Supercoach or AFL Fantasy. I think, yeah, go watch there's a video on DT Talk about Jackson Haitley. Great interview. Okay, number 1 is Lachie Neale. What needs to be said on Lachie Neale? Apparently, also, I think Jack Steele was on a slightly modified program, not sure why. Might be, had a knee clean out, I think. But just on Lachie Neale, apparently he's not training much, but he's probably, I don't know, load management, whatever it's called. But yeah, apparently not training much. Doesn't seem to be in the match sims, but does he really need to? He's just priming himself for another big year. Just an unbelievable player. A bit like Tom Mitchell. He was mentored by Diesel Williams, who was a guy, I think pretty sure he won a Brownlow. He was a guy that just averaged a ton of possessions back in the 90s, I think. Pretty sure it was 90s, don't think it was early 2000s. But yeah, back in the 90s, you know, great player, just was a master at just winning the ball and getting the quick handball off. So I haven't watched a whole lot of him, but when I watched Diesel Williams on Fox Footy on a flashback game, it reminded me so much of Lachie Neale. And Lachie Neale, yeah, obviously improved, was able to hit the scoreboard. Imagine if he kicked straight. Probably a bit of a drop off and has a kind of a rough early fixture in terms of what he averages against certain opponents. But yeah, the most bulletproof option there is really, might get tagged a little bit, but on his days, he can go nuts. Like in the finals, I think, in the final they lost, I think he scored massive, like over 150. So captain option as well. There's nothing really to say on Lachie Neale. He's pretty much the king of the midfield, and there's not a whole lot to suggest that changes. So yeah, it's a tough one to whether to start him, just because he's so expensive, and we do have captain options in the ruck, but I probably feel a bit more safer starting him. So thanks for watching. So I've forgotten what the averages I've given everyone, but it's just a guess anyway. But I have 8th, Macrae, Mitchell, Bont, Macrae, Petracca, Oliver, Steele, and then Lachie Neale. So sort of similar top 3 to last year. It's probably not going to be the same as the year before, but it's just my predictions anyway. So anyway, thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys soon.